Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good. Happy to have everyone here. So, today we will have a lecture about volunteering that will be brought by our friend Tiago. But before that, our friend Danny will do our initial reading and then we will do our initial prayer. Thank you, Danny.
I like doing this. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I'll read again. Listen calmly whenever you are invited to do so. Let the other person complete his thought. Do not jump to certainly ignore incorrect conclusions. Not everyone can express himself quickly or clearly. So listen cheerfully, ignore misstatements and poor choices of words in order to understand what the other is trying to say. If someone accuses you, search for the root of wrongdoing and get rid of it. Dialogue shall always happen without bitterness, leaving a positive balance if he clarifies it. Something for you, if he clarifies something for you or teaches you something, absorb the lesson. If he is blaming someone, if he is blaming someone, lessen the intensity of the offense with expressions of comfort to the offended party. Thank you.
So, with that, let's close our eyes, elevate our thoughts to our Master Jesus, to God, and all the beloved spirits that are present here today, and ask them to enlighten our friend Tiago and to enlighten us as well, that we can learn and understand a bit of all the teachings that will be given for us here today. Thank you, and so be it.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Welcome to our Sunday lecture. Today, in the next few minutes or so, we're going to be talking about volunteering, work for the good as a way of life, which again is a very important and interesting theme. So let's see if I can pass the slides, or Teresa, I'll have to ask your help for this. Okay, let's see. Okay, it's working. Yes. Okay. All right. So while preparing for this lecture, the first thing that came to my mind is how do you define a volunteer? So as most of people these days, I went to AI and asked for their definition, uh, which is actually very helpful. And I think we can expand the definition a little bit throughout this lecture. But ChatGPT replied to me that a volunteer is someone who chooses to give their time, their skills, or effort to help others or support a cause without expecting payment or financial compensation, which I think is already a very broad definition. But what it's pointed out here is that a volunteer, he acts by choice. No one tells them to be a volunteer. No one is obliging them to be a volunteer. It's not part of their work duties. It's something that they just wanted to do and they feel compelled to do. A volunteer will offer their service freely. Again, it's not part of their job, it's not part of their work duties. It's something that they want to do, but then just because they want to do, and they do not charge for it. And usually, a volunteer aims to contribute to a goal or to a community. Like they want to help with some sort of cause. They want to help, for example, to collect donations for someone in need. They want to help an organization. Anything that they find it's meaningful for them. And the volunteers may use their skills. It's something that they may have learned throughout their life that they want to put into use to help somebody else. Or they simply offer their time. They take their time of their week, of their day, and dedicate themselves to that activity. So when I started thinking about this theme, the first thing that came to my mind is some famous organizations that are based on volunteering and charitable work. The first one that came to my mind was Doctors Without Borders, which every now and then the advertising shows to me on social media, and I always get impressed with what they do. So you may know it, but Doctors Without Borders, it's a nonprofit organization that sends healthcare workers to areas that have extreme need. For example, areas that are suffering with armed conflicts, such as Gaza Strip, or areas that are facing extreme poverty with poor access to healthcare. So these healthcare workers, they go there and they offer their service. I took a look. They do receive some payment for this, but the payment is way lower than it would be for like a physician that works like in regular conditions, which reflects the humanitarian purpose of the organization. It always gets to me because me be a healthcare worker, like working these conditions, the conditions that they work, it's very challenging, and I think it's very gratifying for them. But I think it's something that not everyone would be able to do because it's really very challenging situation. I don't think I would be very useful in the Gaza Strip, for example, right? Uh, at least as a healthcare worker. Uh, the other that came to my mind was Fraternity Without Borders, and that I will blame Teresa to remember to remind me of that, because you may have heard it a few times, but Fraternity Without Borders supports a project called the Garden of Butterflies, and the Garden of Butterflies is focused on children and patients that have a very rare skin disease called epidermolysis bullosa. In English, is essentially a disease that causes blisters in the patient's skins, and those blisters they burst and cause deformities on people's bodies, and leading to amputations and high risk for skin cancers as well, and their skin turns very fragile. So that project essentially gathers materials, supplies to take care of these patients, either by wound care, medications, and so on. And they offer to these patients freely. So it's a very beautiful project and raises awareness for a very rare disease. Um, More recently, as you probably have seen on the media, we had Hurricane Melissa in Jamaica. It was a grade 5 hurricane that caused a lot of destruction in Jamaica. So here in Canada and around the world, we had people that got together to gather donations to help people suffering with the consequences of the hurricane. And this is all volunteer work as well. And thinking in the context of Canada, I remember Terry Fox, who you obviously must know if you have been in Canada for a while. So in the 80s, Terry Fox was a patient with a type of cancer called sarcoma, and he led what is now called the Marathon of Hope. So he essentially did a marathon, like north to south, with a prosthesis. And this helped to gather funds to raise funds for cancer research. Terry Fox, he passed away from his cancer, but this act still inspire people to continue the Marathon of Hope and also raise funds for cancer research. So it definitely caused an impact in Canadian society. So we all have those very impressive and meaningful examples of volunteer work. So going back, how this can be reflected on what we learn in Spiritism. So I redesigned the definition thinking of that, and I think we can define that a volunteer is someone who does something good for someone else for the sole satisfaction of doing something good. And I think that it speaks directly to chapter 13 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, which is titled Do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing." Uh, that's that's the title of the chapter, and it's also a direct transcript of one of Jesus' teachings. In one of his teachings, he's talking about almsgiving, uh, and he essentially says to not give alms in front of everyone else to drag attention. Don't play your trumpet when you do that. Instead, do not let your left hand know what your hand is doing. Meaning, do that in secret, because God, who knows everything that is done in secret, will reward you. Uh, so it's essentially talking about renouncing the satisfaction that seeks to be witnessed by others. Because all of us, I think, we like to be praised when we do something good, but that sometimes can, trigger our pride. And what Jesus is telling us is to do the good just for the sole purpose of doing good, to not seek the satisfaction of having witnesses to see you and applaud you when you do something good. Uh, he's talking about prefer the approval from God rather than the world's approval. Essentially, avoid seeking the applause when you do something good. Just seek the satisfaction of doing something good, right? Then do good without ostentation, without showing everyone else. And when we study this chapter, we may find some conflict when, like, we're doing something good, or for example, we are part of an organization that is based on volunteer work. How can we do good without ostentation? Like, should we do that in secret? And something that is very recurrent when we study the gospel on Wednesday is that we talk about the intention of your action. So, for example, if you are part of an organization that does volunteer work and you want to have more people to join that cause, you need to spread the word. You need to make it knowledgeable to everyone else. So you kind of have to make people aware that that is happening. But you're just doing that because you want to get more people to the cause, not because you want to get applause to it. So that's all about the intent as well. And one of the exceptions from the Gospel of Luke, when Jesus says, "You will be blessed because they have no means to repay you." Here he's talking about that passage when Jesus says to invite the poor and the lame to your feast, to the banquets on your house, instead of inviting your friends and your family. He's talking about the pure beneficence of having people that are less fortunate than you to participate in the blessings that you have received. And this says you will be blessed because they have no means to repay you. It's about doing the good without thinking about have a recompense in mind. And the recompense is essentially the joy and the satisfaction of seeing someone being happy or have a suffering relieved because of something you did. It's just that inner satisfaction that comes with a good action. So whenever we have great calamities like we had recently in Jamaica with Hurricane Melissa, or we can think about others that happened throughout the years. We can think about Hurricane Katrina in the US a few decades ago. You can think about earthquakes in Haiti and Japan, those great calamities that make headlines in the media. We always think about these people, and naturally, we feel this urge to help people, to help the people that are in distress because of the situation. And this is certainly very valid. As I said, here in Canada and elsewhere, we have organizations that are raising funds, raising donations to help these people. But the gospel also mentioned these calamities, and there's a passage also from chapter 13 that is called the hidden misfortunes. And I would say personally, this is like my favorite excerpt from the Gospel according to Spiritism. And I think Kardec was very inspired when he wrote that. So Kardec then starts talking about of the great calamities that stimulate people to do something for someone else. But we often miss what he calls the hidden misfortunes. So essentially, Kardec, I think he starts to tell a parable inside the Gospel according to Spiritism by himself, or maybe he was inspired by someone else, but or by obviously by the good spirits. But what he tells that there is this woman who dressed herself very nicely, but in a simple way, uh, and she has the daughter with her. And this woman then goes to this neighborhood, which we are made to understand that it's a poor neighborhood, like a low income neighborhood, where people are going through necessities. And this woman, he describes that she goes to this house accompanied by her daughter, and the house is very simple. It's very poor. There is a mother there with her children, and she's already known in the house because the family greets her very cheerfully. And what the woman brings to that family is essentially supplies, everything that they need to live by, anything that they need. So Kardec says that she has brought what they need along with gentle and counseling words that enable them to accept the benefit without being ashamed. Uh, Here I highlighted what they need because I think that's important. It's important for us whenever we are trying to help someone and we have the urge to help someone because we have like goodwill, um, not to be so anxious and actually assess what they actually need. Because sometimes when we do too much, we may actually not give them what they need, and sometimes we may get in the way of things and make things worse, even with our good intentions. So that woman, knowing what the family needed, she brought exactly what was required to them, uh, and not add anything that was extra or anything that was useless. Because she knew them, she knew what they needed, and I think we should follow this example. We want to help someone, ask them, "What do you need?" Because sometimes I think that you need something that you actually do not, and that will not be helpful. So talk to them. Assessing what they need is also part of recognize that that person need has their human dignity. They know exactly what they need, and treat them as a human. Ask them, they'll tell you exactly what is required to them. And the other part that I highlighted here is accept the benefit without being ashamed. And again, that is also part of the human dignity. That woman just did not drop the supplies, the food there. She actually talked to them and treated them as the human beings that they are. Uh, Following that, like she does a complete work because Kardec describes that the father of the family at that time was in the hospital and was very worried about the destiny of the family. So after the woman leaves the house, she goes to the hostel and gives the father an update of what was happening and to give them some relief what was while he was going through his disease. So this is a very touching part of the gospel to me. I think it speaks deeply to all of us and how we should practice charity. Um, the other part I want to highlight is she asks them neither about their beliefs nor their opinions. Uh, Sometimes we tend to be sectarians. We only help the people that are similar to us, that have a similar thought, and that's in the vogue. This is a good thing. Like you're still helping someone else, but we should see everyone as your brother or sister. You should, love and help everyone independent of their acts, of their beliefs, even if they contradict you directly. Actually, the people that contradict you, which sometimes become your enemies, or sometimes are the best opportunity that you have to help them. Like helping someone that contradicts you is actually a great merit. And as I said at the beginning, the woman is accompanied by her daughter, who is dressed kind of in the same way, in a clean but simple and respectful way. And Kardec asks why is she accompanied by her daughter? Because then the daughter learns on how to practice charity. And then Kardec describes a very interesting interaction between mother and child in this part. The daughter asks, I also want to do charity. And then the mother explains, well, if I give something that I did to you and you give to someone else, you're not exactly doing charity. You are essentially passing away something that I gave to you. So the merit would not be yours. That would not be fair. But then she explains, well, when you go to the hospital with me and you help me treat the wounds of the sick, you are doing something. You are giving something that you're doing yourself. Or like you can sew clothes for the little ones. You already know how to do that. When you do that, you're already giving something from yourself. So what she's saying is that giving of oneself is to give something, giving your time, giving your abilities. Um, and it points out that it's much less about like money, the material thing, is your dedication, your abilities, but in favor to someone else. And then Kardec says that mother is explaining to the daughter how to actually practice charity the way that Jesus wanted us to practice. And then Kardec closes I'll say this parable by telling that one of the women that this woman helps one day was walking on the street. She was selling, the artifacts, and she finds the benefactress, and then she wants like to greet her and say something, and then she goes, "Stay shut. Do not tell anyone. That to keep that in secret, right? To keep that in between them." Because that woman did not want the approval of the society. She just wanted the approval from God and from her conscience, and she was satisfied with that. And Kardec finalized saying that's the way that Jesus acted. Probably one, myself, personal opinion, probably one of the most beautiful passages of the Gospel according to Spiritism. And that woman makes us think there's so much opportunities for us to do good and help someone else if we just pay attention to it. In another passage now from the Spirit's teaching, again from the chapter 13, we have the spirit of caritas. Caritas actually means charity and comes certainly from Latin. She has a couple messages in this chapter, and in one of the passages, she describes that she's doing her usual rounds in the morning, and she sees so many people in need, so many poor people, yeah, or elderly people that are dying by totally alone without someone to supporting them. At the time, she describes also a young mother that is doesn't have anything to eat, and she's very worried about her baby. She doesn't have enough no breast milk to give to the child, and the spirit of Caritas goes around and she tries to give spiritual support to all those people. And then she describes like this, that I who have nothing have made myself a beggar for them, and then go everywhere encouraging beneficence and inspiring good thoughts in generous and compassionate souls. Essentially, what she's saying here is that there are good spirits looking for those people in suffering, and they will actively try to influence us to do something good for those people in need, to help them. Sometimes when, we talk about this in spiritism a lot, and sometimes you're just in your day, your regular activities, and you have this thought, that inspiration that comes from nowhere else, and sometimes it's a spirit that's trying to connect with you to try to do something, and sometimes something good for someone else. So nothing is by chance. And Caritas points out that everywhere abound unfortunates whose cupboards are without bread, whose hearths are without fire, and whose beds are without blankets. And she says, I do not tell you what you should do. I leave the initiative to your good heart. So essentially, she's making herself more aware that are those people in need. And what we should do, it's our decision. Again, it's our free will. And that talks again about volunteer work. Remember, a volunteer, they act by choice. They act out of their own free will. So she leads to us what we should do. She leads that to our conscience. So there are many ways of practicing charity, for sure. And then, while thinking about this talk, I think we can infer that a volunteer work is an expression of the law of love and charity as taught by Jesus, put into action. Is one of the ways to do that. This is my own inference and conclusion of this. Obviously, we can open for debate and expand that afterwards. But I think we can say that it's one of the expressions of how Jesus wanted us to act. He said, love your neighbor as yourself. And in Spiritism, we always say is that without charity, there is no salvation. So volunteer work, true volunteer work is one of the ways of doing that. Okay. But how can we practice charity? And now I'll get a little personal, because with this theme, so backstage, so we have a schedule of the lectures. Rafael, who is one of our workers of TSS, very gladly and very nicely puts this schedule together, and he suggests some readings for us. So I look at the theme, and that was one that got me a little bit distressed. And why was that? Because then I started to think about all those organizations that do amazing works, and I start to think, well, how can I talk about volunteer work? Because I feel I don't do anything that is useful. Who am I to talk about this? But then, nothing's by chance, right? And then every lecture that we give, like, it's an opportunity for us to reread a few things, reading new things in Spiritism, and think about ourselves. So I learn a little bit more with every lecture that I'm doing here. So how can we practice charity? So if you read about that in the Gospel according to Spiritism, the concept of charity is very broad in Spiritism. It's not about almsgiving, just giving money to someone on the street. This is probably the easiest way of doing charity. But you can do charity by being merciful to each other, by being indulgent to your brother and sister, by listening to someone, just practicing beneficence. All of this is charity. Praying for someone is also a form of charity. But applying this to volunteer work, how can I ourselves, like maybe not being part of a big organization, not being the lead of a volunteer project, how can we practice charity in the context of volunteer work? And then going back to the gospel again, this AI generated picture of one of the messages from Caritas. So in one of her other messages in the same chapter, she describes this group of women who are sewing clothes for young children of women that have no much material resources. So she describes that the winter is coming, and those women were not able to gather supplies for the children, and they are very worried, very distressed that they won't have supplies for the winter and that their children's gonna starve. So Caritas describes that there were good spirits that inspired women that were more naturally fortunate than them to help them. And then those women, they essentially start to sew to produce little clothes for the children, for those children. And then Caritas also described that this organization of women, there are also men who support them by doing pleasant readings. And then I was like, okay, so the women are doing all the work, and then those men are just doing readings, patriarchs. But then think twice. What those people are doing is just giving what they know how to do in support of each other. So obviously, maybe the most hands-on work is definitely to do the sewing. But the men that are reading are also giving their time and giving those readings to support and to give a stimuli to the people who are sewing. So sometimes we think that what we do is not important, right? My father, for example, in the Spiritus Center that we attend in Brazil, he just loved to greet people on the door of the Spiritus Center for especially the children that came for the children's education. And we don't think immediately that greeting someone at the door is important. But over time, some of those children grew up, and they are taller than me these days. But we had the opportunity to get some feedback from these children, now adults, and say, "Oh, I remember you. I remember that you gave me good morning every Sunday, blah blah blah, and that was important, etc., etc." So giving good morning to someone who doesn't take any physical efforts, just take a few seconds, sometimes means a lot to someone else. So sometimes we don't have the total extent of the impact of what we do. And if we do something with a good intent to someone else, that may mean the world for that person. Even though for us, it just meant just a little thing, just meant nothing, right? So the message that I got from that is from that passage from Caritas says, use your own abilities in benefits of your brothers and sisters. See what you can do, see what is under your power, and see how if you can use that in benefit of someone else. That is also volunteer work. And you don't need necessarily to be part of an organization to do that. You can do that in secret by yourself. Obviously, if you want to go to an organization, get together with other people, that is also good. But my point is to not feel guilty if you do not are a part of a major volunteer project, because there are so many opportunities to do volunteer work. Okay, now I'm gonna refer to Rafael again, because Rafael, he puts some suggested literature for the lectures, and he put 2 this time, which I struggled to understand why. So I read what he sent and was like, okay, this is very interesting, and that is great. But I struggle to see how does that fit into volunteer work. So thank you, Rafael, for getting me thinking. I learned a lot. So one of the literature that he suggests was this book called Changing Attitudes by the Spirit Hamed. The book, there is an English version which I could not find. So what you have here is like my translation. So if you find the English version, you may see slightly different words, but I try my best to keep the meaning. Um, one of the passages of this book, I would say, is essentially about know yourself. And one of the steps to do volunteer work and do charity goes through knowing yourself. In the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 17, there is a topic called about the duty, the moral duty. And the spirits tell us that the duty begins precisely at the point in which you threaten your neighbor's happiness and peace of mind. It ends at the limit you would not want to see surpassed regarding yourselves. This part of the gospel is one that I sometimes got some struggle understanding what they actually meant, but I came to understand that the duty is essentially your moral compass. It's essentially your conscience. It's telling you what you should do, what you should not do, according to the laws of God. And sometimes it's something that's just in your mind, it's your own decision. When you succeed, you know that you succeed, and that stays with yourself. When you know that you did not do well, that also stays within yourself, and you do your best to correct yourself. So it's kind of a moral compass that we all have inherent to us. And then the Spirit Hamed, he comments on that, and there are a few passages that actually speak directly to volunteer work or how I felt about doing this lecture. So one of those is how to observe the intimate duty imprinted in the conscience before so many social, professional, and effective obligations that often impose us divergent pathways. So one thing that I thought was, well, how can I do volunteer work if sometimes I feel that I don't have time to do even things for myself with all the obligations that life imposes, with all the duties that life imposes. So when I read that, like for the third or fourth time, I say, oh, okay, that's just speaking directly with the struggle that we have. That sometimes we say that we don't do things because we don't have the time. We have so many things in our plate that we cannot do anything else. And it's hard actually to conciliate all things. But again, we'll go back to the Spirit Caritas saying, well, what do you have within your abilities that can put into service to someone else? And again, there are so many opportunities, and sometimes it takes just so little time that may be meaningful to someone. So I think that's how you can try to incorporate your moral duty to your other obligations in your life. Another thing very interesting that Hamed points out is in this part where he says, the worry with the duty of others makes you distant from your own responsibility. And he says, we do not refer to real aid, always important, so for example, volunteer work, but to the interference in the competencies of your neighbor, preventing them from acquiring autonomy. So he says essentially to control yourself and assess the needs. To be honest, when I read this, one thing that came to my mind was a movie from the 2000s called Amélie. It's a movie Gen Z. It's a movie from 2001, so a little bit old for you. It was very cold at that time. So very briefly, Amélie is a French movie. She essentially helps someone. She feels happy about helping someone, but then she starts to help some other people too much in a way that she interferes with their own autonomy. Like she tries to manipulate things, just to try to get that thrill, that happiness again. And sometimes she just, she gets in the way. So I for some reason, that Pastor Hamed brought me back to that movie, which I hadn't watched in a long time. But I think it speaks directly because when you want to help someone, like sometimes we are so eager to do it that we take control of the autonomy of that person. That's not what we want to do. You will have, that's why you say you have to know yourself, pace yourself, see what that other person needs, and actually help them, to walk with their own legs. And I think that's an important aspect when you are helping someone else. And then this other two parts spoke directly to me. And they said, because you do not comprehend your inner self, you compare yourself to others, forgetting that none of us is predestined to receive at the same time the same teachings and to do the same things, as there are countless ways of living and evolving. Remember that should care only with your own way of being. So that part, no, that struck me because that's what I was doing, right? I was comparing myself to all those other people that lead volunteer works, which maybe I could join, but I was feeling myself little before all that. And Hamed says that's because you still not comprehend your inner self. If you compare yourself, like you're gonna be stuck, you're not gonna do anything. You feel humiliated. So remember that you all have your own path, your own way of learning, of doing something. So study that, study yourself. What are your abilities? What are your qualities? What are your flaws? What can you do to improve yourself while helping others in their own paths? And he says, we cannot forget that one who compares himself to others ends up feeling elevated, pride, or humiliated. Also, pride. He never gives himself the proper credit, neither he truly knows himself. So do not compare yourselves. Like sometimes you feel overwhelmed by what other people are doing by this comparison. Just focus on yourself first and see what you can do. And the other part is love yourself. Um, and love ourselves is an exercise. Hamed says you can only give what you own. So you think about volunteering work as an expression of love as taught by Jesus. And Jesus saying that you should love yourselves and love your neighbor. Like you should care about yourself, practice the love and affection towards yourself so you can produce that within you and be able to offer that to others. Hamed then says that who gives affection collects the happiness of seeing multiplied that what they gave, but we only give in conformity with what we can dispose in the act of giving. So again, volunteer work is about free will. And if you do something good from free will, that's also comes from the love within yourself. So whenever you do something that is volunteer, do that with love, like have that purpose and try your best to give that to other people. But remember to take care of yourself as well. Love yourself. And I think one of the most important, do not ask for love and affection. First, give to yourself and then to others without ever charging taxes of gratitude and acknowledgement. So doing good for the sole purpose of the satisfaction of doing good. It is important that follow Jesus' steps in the donation of abundant love without ever demanding for anyone, and never forget that you are responsible for your own feelings, not yourself. Right? What is the purpose that you're doing this? Right? It's not to get applause from anyone else. It's for the purpose of helping someone else while also improving yourself. Because love yourself and love your neighbor is a two-way. It's a two-way pathway, right? You can love your neighbor and love yourself while enhancing those feelings within you. And again, the other literature that our coordinator gave me was uh, something about Joseph of Galilee, um, which may be the ultimate expression of volunteer work and of being of not seeking acknowledgement for what he did. We don't think too much about Joseph, usually. For us, we'll have like a Catholic background. It's easy to think about Mary, and we have some Spiritist books about Mary. And Mary is obviously important. We understand Mary as one of the pure spirits that now works in the spirit realm, helping and enlightening other spirits. We don't think too much about Joseph, and there's not many things mentioned about Joseph in the Gospels. We know that Joseph was the father of the family, of the earthly family of Jesus. He was always in his carpentry, but he did important things. He guided Mary when she was pregnant to the census. He helped to protect them during the persecution of Herodes. And he never sought acknowledgement for any of these things. When he was in doubt, when Mary was pregnant, like he thought about rejecting Mary, then an angel of the Lord, as described, came to him in a dream. He never glowed himself about it. Oh, I received a message from an angel. He kept it to himself. And Emmanuel describes that he passed through the world in the divine silence of God. And he remembers us that at one point, God trusted this man, the doors of Christianity, the beginning of Christianity, because he protected Mother Mary and baby Jesus in the beginning of Jesus' journey on earth. So he did an important work and didn't seek acknowledgement for it. And I think this is like the ultimate model of volunteer work. Like, you are the father of Jesus, you don't seek any acknowledgement for it, and we don't give you. He passed in silence, but we recognize that today is important. I think it's a model for us as well when we think about him. There's one other slide. Okay, so I want to finish this just showing some of the volunteer work that TSS does, just highlighting it, since we're talking about volunteer work. So we had a blood donation recently. And yes, if you send a photo on WhatsApp, I may use it in a lecture. So this is part of our TSS workers engaging in blood donations. We always talk about the Red Door, which we collect donations. You can always collect on the box back there. And all the activities of the house are volunteer work. All the workers that we see here, they are volunteering to do it. And as a volunteer, I see that I actually gain much more than I give. And that's the beauty of volunteer work. You see yourself as a beneficiary while you're producing that volunteer work, right? So all of the activities are made by volunteer work, and I see myself like gaining much more. I said a little bit more when I give a lecture, and I gain so much spiritually by coming here that actually I receive way more than I give, right? And that's what volunteer work is about. You gain much more spiritually by giving yourself to others. That was it for today. Thank you, and I'm open for questions. Okay, no comments.
That I have
Okay.
so first, because just to tell you that what you're doing right now is a volunteer job, so thank you. All the time that you devoted, not only here today, but the time that you spend at home preparing this is all time that you volunteer. And in fact, in TSS, everything is done by volunteers, right? Nobody gets paid for it. So the cleaning is done because you have volunteers. The kids class right now is happy because we have volunteers to do it, right? The lectures, the studies, every single activity here is done by volunteers. And those volunteers that exist to volunteer their time and the little bit of the knowledge that they have to exchange this house wouldn't exist. And it's a house that is very important to all of us here, right?
Mhm.
That's what we're here to come to get comfort, help, to get, some energy
Yeah.
to keep going on out
Yeah.
there, right? So that's volunteer job. So you're doing volunteer job for a long time for us, yeah. So you know what volunteer job is. Because in your lectures almost sound like I still need to learn what's volunteer that you're doing already, right? And this is very important. And the other thing that I want to comment is in terms of you saying how everybody has something to offer. So I'm going to give you 2 interactions that I had with the homeless. One of them is a guy that I didn't give a penny to him, but as he's passing by, because I learned this from someone saying something a long time ago, so it's horrible how we're invisible to people. So now I take this habit that when I pass by someone begging for money, I at least look at their face and say, sorry, I don't have anything, but I look at them and see that. So as I'm going down Spadina and this guy is begging, I just look, it's like, sorry man, I don't have anything. And he looked at me as like, whoa, finally someone didn't ignore me. Really, I'm here the whole day, people just ignore me as if I didn't exist.
Mhm.
And I just looked back and like, and that's very sad because you do exist, right?
Mhm.
I didn't give him a penny, but just the fact that I acknowledge him, like, really this huge
Yeah.
impact on him, like, wow, I'm
Yeah.
not invisible. I am someone. Right?
This.
And the other one actually is when a homeless gave to me something back. So there's this guy that every time I'm coming home, mostly it's 3 times a week. I'm coming home, he's in front of the LCBO that's a block away from my place. He's there with his dog, right? And it's so cool because he puts sunglasses on the dog, and it's a really cool guy. And then one day I'm coming home and I'm really, really, really in a bad mood.
Mhm.
And then he just looks at me and say, hey, Billy, just smile. And he really put that
Then
smile on my
immediately-
face, and it completely changed. He changed my day. And I pass by on these days, we all say hi to each other. He changed dogs. I say, hey, it's different. So we talk, and I never give a penny to this guy.
Mhm.
Never. But we interact, and sometimes the way he interacts with me, he changed my day,
Mhm.
right? And that's a homeless guy on the street begging for money. And he still has something
Mhm.
to give to us
Mhm.
when we pass him by. It's just a smile saying, hey, Beauty, have a good day. And he has something positive always to tell to us when we pass. And I have seen interactions not just with me, you interact with other people as well. So we all have really something to give it away, right? So I have this guy, and honestly, I never give him any money, but he changed my day sometimes,
Yeah.
right?
Definitely, you recognize their human dignity, which sometimes the most important thing. Like is just releasing some coins and never looking at the person. It's a human being there.
Thiago, when I see Red Door over there, for example, or even Blood Donation, I see donation,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't feel like volunteering. Volunteering would be organizing the thing, but I feel more as a volunteer when I spend my time, as you said before, without asking for anything. When we come and clean,
Mm-hmm.
we're doing volunteering,
Mhm.
right? How do we concatenate those two things, right? Donation and volunteering. Not necessarily they are the same things for me, at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it depends on how you call it, right? So donation. So donation may be something very easy. You just grab something and you give to someone else. You don't spend too much time in doing it. It may be something that you don't need. Blood is a little bit different because blood you need that for your life. So you give me a little bit of your, let's say, life supply. You're not gonna die sooner if you donate blood, please. But you're giving something that brings oxygen to your cells that you're having a little bit of abundance and you give to someone else. And it's not something that you can buy anywhere. You actually, like, the blood banks need blood donation. So I would say still that is volunteering. But again, depends on how you call it. You take your time, you put your arm there, and that blood's gonna be used for someone else, probably very soon. right? Because the blood banks, they run short very often. So that's a very important thing. You may not see as a volunteering. I would say yes, because no one is paying to do that. You may get a soup, perfect, okay, but no one is actually paying to do that, right? So I think that is still volunteering. And I think depends on how you call it. And Teresa has a comment there.
Just say in terms of the red door, yeah, maybe come here and put the thing, but
Yeah.
the box is not just for me. We do have a volunteers create the
Yeah,
candidate.
exactly.
Yeah.
Who paint, who now is gonna grab this box, drive
All
all
the
to
way,
red door,
yeah.
drop it off,
Yeah.
and it's only happened because you do have a volunteer who
Mhm.
does that for us, right? So we're gonna be starting probably the Christmas campaign,
Mhm.
right? But some volunteers in contact with the red door. What's the things that do? What you guys need from us? So there is a volunteer.
There is a volunteer
involved
part.
with the red.
Yeah.
But I think even when you donate, let's say money, right? Or even if you bring something here, you spend your time going and buying it, bringing it here. Even the money that you use to buy that is the time that you work for that. So maybe you volunteer that time, let's say.
Mhm.
It depends on how you call it, on how you say
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah, it sounds to me that volunteer is more donating time, donating your work, right? Because you can have, you can donate without being volunteer.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like contributing to somebody else's volunteer work. So,
Yeah.
for example, maybe a quick example. So we were talking about our next lunch and learn in our WhatsApp group, and I said, I'm terrible in the kitchen, but I can do that. So that's the way I use my resources, my abilities to help, right? So it's all about the thing what Caritas said, like use what you have in your possessions, your abilities to help someone else. That is charity. And you can call that volunteer work, even if you're not doing the volunteering part directly, you're contributing to someone else, and that's also helpful.
And I think it also, as she showed in a couple slides, like I think was the first and second, charity volunteer is also about your time, right? So it took time for you to do whatever you did,
Mhm.
either donating blood, either putting together the red door, or grabbing the food and bringing it here, right? Like even though it might sound minuscule when you think about it, it is a little bit. So imagine that you were this big jar in your life of charity that you do. Every little thing you do is you putting one more marble in your jar, or one more coin, whatever you want to call, on your charity jar. So even though it might sound so small, when you look at the big picture of everything you're doing throughout your life, it makes a huge impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Like a donation, it's so crucial for those who receive.
Mhm.
If it's money, food, or anything, volunteer is an act that helps all of these to happen. But many other things could happen, right? As you said, like a listen to what Esther's just mentioned.
Yeah.
It's also you donate your time and you donate your love,
Mhm.
your patience, your illusions,
Mhm.
to help others.
Yeah, so there was the story about the homeless man helping you. Reminded me of the story that my friend told me too. At TMU, there's this like homeless man that stays in front of the Tim Hortons door, and he always opens up for every student. If it's like raining, if it's snowing, he just opens up and says hi. And he's been there for years. So there's people that have already graduated, been there for like 6 years, alumni that come and check on that guy and just like, hey, how are you doing? It's like a big impact on him.
Yeah.
Some people go ahead and buy him like coffee, buy him little things. He's like,
Yeah.
oh, he's so well known that everyone knows what his coffee order is now. They're like, oh, it's a double double. Double double. It's so sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Not
the,
that people
yeah.
are gonna miss him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And probably nobody's gonna get your whole doors ready by
Exactly.
anymore.
Yeah.
Dude, look, his presence. If he's not
That's it. It's a simple thing, just opening the door, but no, kindness goes a long way, right? It generates kindness.
I just have a comment here from Larissa. Saying volunteering is so important because it reminds us that our own problems are small compared to the suffering of so many others.
Yeah. It definitely puts your own problems into perspective. I look at someone else.
And I just have one last comment, just to know So I work for Protect Without
Mhm.
Borders as a volunteer. We do have the project in Brazil, we do have other projects in Africa as well to Protect Without Borders. And one thing that's also important for us to understand is that when you go to the volunteer job, just because you're not paid, that doesn't mean that you don't have to have commitment.
Mhm.
It's when
Yeah.
you say to someone, I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna volunteer here, there's a TSS or whatever it is, commitments as important as if you're getting paid.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have the impression that because it's volunteer, oh, I do if I can do it, if I don't, I don't,
Mhm.
right? It's not volunteer anyways, I'm not getting paid for it. And that's, I think, one of the difficulties of
Yeah.
a volunteer job, right? You have the commitment to know that
Mhm.
as a volunteer, if it's in your heart to do it, go and do it.
Do it
It is a
committed.
commitment,
Yeah.
just like if you're getting paid or not, because people are counting on it. The moment it said, I'm gonna do it. Of
Mhm.
course, things happen in life, and sometimes even
Mhm.
here at TSS, it can happen before people have to change your
Mhm.
lectures because
Yep.
all of a sudden I cannot come this Sunday, and things happen, of course. But my experience working with so many volunteers, it's sometimes the difficulties to get the commitment.
That's true. That's true. We need the commitment. Any other comments? No? All right. So thank everyone for coming. Thank you all our people. We're gonna listen now and go to our passes.